Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to be really taking a close look at machine learning.
Oh, yeah.
And to help us do that, we're going to be using a great guide called Master Machine Learning, a practical 101 guide for beginners from the AI Coach by Anil Nathu.
Fantastic resource.
Yeah, I think it really is. It covers a lot of ground. I think it's a really valuable area to get at least a basic understanding of.
Absolutely. I mean, this is becoming increasingly important, I think, across pretty much every industry. So having even just a basic understanding of the fundamentals can be incredibly valuable.
Yeah. So let's dive in. The guide starts with a great, very simple question. What is machine learning? I mean, we hear this term all the time. What does it actually mean?
Right, right. Well, at its core, machine learning is all about enabling computers to learn from data without being explicitly programmed.
Okay.
So instead of relying on sort of rigid rules or instructions, machine learning algorithms can adapt and improve their performance as they are exposed to more data.
So it's like teaching a computer to think for itself in a way.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
instead of a programmer writing a specific line of code for every possible decision, the machine learning model learns to recognize patterns and make inferences based on the data that it's given.
That's a great way to put it. It's really about recognizing patterns
Yeah.
and then, using those patterns to make predictions or decisions.
And this is what powers things like recommendation systems on e-commerce sites or, like when Netflix suggests what you might like to watch next.
Absolutely. And it goes even further than that. Self-driving cars rely heavily on machine learning algorithms.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's really everywhere now, isn't it?
It is, and it's only becoming more prevalent.
Yeah. That's why I think, even if you're not a data scientist or software engineer, understanding at least the basics of machine learning is becoming really crucial for leadership. You got to be able to make data-driven decisions and to kind of stay ahead of the curve.
Absolutely. The AI Coach by Anil Nathu really emphasizes the importance of understanding machine learning for anyone who wants to be a leader in today's world. Because it's not just about technology, it's about understanding how this technology is transforming every aspect of our lives.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the AI Coach by Anil Nathu, it doesn't just define machine learning. It goes on to sort of break it down into different types of machine learning, which each have their own kind of unique approach and applications.
It's a good way to think about it. The guide, it delves into 5 main types. You have supervised learning, unsupervised learning, self-supervised learning, reinforcement learning, and semi-supervised learning.
Wow, that's a lot of different flavors of machine learning. So I guess we should probably start with supervised learning, because I think that's one that a lot of people are maybe familiar with. What's the basic idea there?
So imagine you're teaching a child to identify different fruits. You show
Yeah.
them an apple and you say, this is an apple, right?
Right.
You do the same for a banana, an orange, and so on. In supervised learning, the algorithm is given labeled data, meaning it's provided with both the input, like an image of the fruit, and the desired output, which would be the label apple.
Okay, so it learns to map the input to the correct output based on the examples that it's given. And then when it sees a new piece of data, like a new picture of a fruit, you can use what it's learned to say, oh, that's a banana.
Exactly. And that's why it's called supervised learning, because you're supervising the algorithm. You're giving it the right answers.
Gotcha. So what kind of applications does supervised learning have in the real world?
Oh, tons. Image recognition, for one. Think about how Facebook can tag your friends in photos automatically.
Oh, yeah,
That's supervised learning at work. Or spam filters.
right.
Figuring out which emails are junk and which are important.
Okay, so it's all about learning from labeled examples to make predictions about new data that it hasn't seen before.
Exactly. And the AI Coach by Anil Nathu gives a lot of other examples of how supervised learning is being used in industries, from healthcare to finance to marketing. It's really incredibly versatile.
It's amazing how powerful this technology is becoming.
It is. Now, in contrast to supervised learning, where the algorithm learns from labeled data, unsupervised learning takes a bit of a different approach. Instead of being given the right answers, it's presented with unlabeled data and tasked with finding patterns and structures on its own.
So it's more like giving the algorithm a giant jigsaw puzzle, but without the picture on the box.
That's a great way to think about it. It has to figure out how the pieces fit together without any guidance.
Right. So what kind of things can you do with unsupervised learning?
Well, one of the most common applications is customer segmentation. So let's say you're a retailer and you want to group your customers based on their purchasing behavior.
Right.
You can use unsupervised learning to identify those patterns and create clusters of customers who are similar to each other.
Okay, so instead of me telling the computer, these people are all similar, it figures that out on its own.
Exactly, and that's what makes it so powerful. You can uncover insights that you might not have even thought to look for.
I see, I see. So it's like data exploration almost.
Exactly. Unsupervised learning is all about extracting meaning from data without explicit instructions.
Wow. I'm already starting to rethink how I view the data I encounter every day. There's so much potential there for uncovering hidden insights.
There really is, and that's what makes machine learning so exciting. It's opening up new possibilities for understanding the world around us.
Okay, so we've talked about supervised and unsupervised learning. Now there's also self-supervised learning. That sounds even more independent. How does that one work?
So imagine, instead of giving the algorithm the entire puzzle, you only give it a few pieces and ask it to predict what the missing pieces look like.
Okay.
That's essentially what self-supervised learning does. It leverages the structure of the data itself to create its own labels and learn from them.
So it's like the algorithm is teaching itself.
In a way, yes. And this is really powerful when you're dealing with massive data sets where it would be impossible to label everything manually.
Right. So what kind of areas is self-supervised learning used in?
One area where it's been very effective is in natural language processing.
Okay.
So training algorithms to understand and generate human language.
So things like chatbots or language translation tools.
Exactly. And also in computer vision.
Right.
So teaching computers to see and interpret images. Self-supervised learning has been really instrumental in advancing those fields.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So it's pushing the boundaries of what machines can learn without us explicitly telling them what to do.
It is. And it's one of the areas of machine learning that's advancing very rapidly.
Okay. Now let's talk about reinforcement learning. You mentioned earlier that it takes inspiration from how humans learn through trial and error. So how does that actually work in the context of machines?
So imagine you're training a dog. You reward them for good behavior and discourage bad behavior.
Right.
Similarly, in reinforcement learning, the algorithm, often called an agent, learns by interacting with its environment and receiving feedback in the form of rewards or penalties.
Okay, so the agent's goal is to figure out the best course of action to maximize its rewards over time.
Precisely. The agent explores different strategies, learns from its successes and failures, and gradually refines its behavior to achieve its objective.
So it's kind of like learning to play a game, right? You try different things, see what works, and get better with each round.
Exactly. And the AI Coach by Anil Nathu has this great example of AlphaGo,
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
the program that learned to play Go at a superhuman level,
Right.
and it did that through reinforcement learning.
Wow. I mean, that's mind-blowing. A machine learning to master such a complex game through trial and error, that's really incredible.
It is. And reinforcement learning isn't just limited to games. It's being applied in robotics, control systems, even personalized medicine, where algorithms can learn to optimize treatment strategies for individual patients. So it has the potential to really revolutionize a lot of different fields.
Yeah, the applications seem almost limitless.
We really are. And finally, we have semi-supervised learning, which, as the name suggests, kind of sits somewhere between supervised and unsupervised learning.
Okay, a hybrid approach.
How does that work?
So in semi-supervised learning, the algorithm is given a small amount of labeled data and a much larger amount of unlabeled data.
Okay.
And it uses that labeled data as a starting point to guide its learning process and then leverages the unlabeled data to further improve its performance.
So it's like getting a few clues to solve the puzzle faster rather than starting completely blind.
Exactly. And this is really useful in situations where labeling data is expensive or time-consuming.
Right.
It allows you to get more out of the data you have. Okay, so we've covered all 5 main types of machine learning: supervised, unsupervised, self-supervised, reinforcement, and semi-supervised. Wow, it's fascinating how these different techniques are being used to solve all sorts of problems across so many different domains.
It is. And the AI Coach by Anil Nathu does a great job of breaking down these different approaches and explaining how they work in a way that's easy to understand.
Yeah, I think it's a great resource for anyone who wants to learn more about this really important field.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really is amazing, isn't it? And I think the AI Coach by Anil Nathu does a really nice job of not just giving you the high level, but really kind of explaining the details of how these algorithms actually work, which I think is crucial for really understanding, their capabilities, but also their limitations.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, before we move on, I want to go back to uh, supervised and unsupervised learning for a second.
Sure.
Because I think those are probably the 2 most common types, and I think it's really important to understand the key distinctions between those 2.
Absolutely. It's easy to get kind of lost in the terminology, but Having a solid grasp on, what makes supervised learning different from unsupervised learning is really key to understanding machine learning as a whole.
Right. So can you just walk us through, like, what are the core elements that really set those two apart?
Yeah. I mean, I think the most fundamental difference really lies in the type of data they use. So as we talked about, supervised learning relies on labeled data, right? Where each input is paired with a corresponding output.
Right. So it's like having a teacher who's giving you the answers.
Exactly, yeah. So the algorithm can learn the relationship between the inputs and the outputs because it's been explicitly told, this input corresponds to this output.
Right. So it's learning by example. Like,
Yeah.
here's a bunch of training data. Here are all the answers for that training data. Now go figure out how to predict the answers for new data.
Exactly. Yeah. And because you know the desired outputs, it's really easy to evaluate the performance of the model, right? And you can kind of tweak it and adjust it and make sure it's actually learning effectively.
Okay, that makes sense. And then with unsupervised learning, we're dealing with unlabeled data, right?
Yeah.
So the algorithm kind of has to figure out the patterns and structures on its own without any explicit guidance.
That's right. Yeah. It's more like exploration discovery, It's about uncovering hidden relationships, grouping similar data points together.
So it's like letting the algorithm sort of make sense of the data without imposing our own preconceived notions of what the answers should be.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. And that's what makes it so powerful, right? You can uncover things that you might not have even thought to look for.
This distinction is really starting to click for me now. It's amazing how, these two approaches, they're so fundamentally different, but they can both be really effective in different contexts.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it really speaks to the versatility of machine learning.
Okay. Now, the AI Coach by Anil Nathu doesn't just talk about the great things about machine learning. It also talks about some of the challenges. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, it's not all rosy. There are some potential pitfalls, some limitations to be aware of.
Absolutely. It's essential to approach it with a balanced perspective, to recognize that, yeah, this is incredibly powerful technology, but it's not a silver bullet.
Right. And one of the things that really stood out to me was the issue of data quality and quantity.
Yeah.
Because it seems like, even the most sophisticated algorithm is only as good as the data that it's trained on.
Absolutely. Garbage in, garbage out.
Right.
If the data is incomplete, inaccurate, biased, the resulting model is likely to reflect those flaws.
Right. And that could lead to, inaccurate predictions or unfair outcomes.
Absolutely.
And the AI Coach by Anil Nathu emphasizes the importance of data preprocessing, really
Yeah.
cleaning and preparing the data before you feed it to the algorithm.
That's right. Yeah, that's a step that's often overlooked, but it's absolutely crucial for building robust and reliable machine learning models.
Yeah. Another challenge that kind of resonated with me was the issue of interpretability,
Yeah.
especially with some of these more complex models like deep neural networks, these black boxes as they're often called. They can make incredibly accurate predictions, but it's not always clear how they're arriving at those predictions.
Yeah. And that can be a problem, right? Especially in like high stakes domains like healthcare or finance or criminal justice. If you can't understand why a model is making the decisions it's making, it's very hard to trust its outputs.
Yeah. It's like having a magic 8-ball that gives you the answers but doesn't tell you how it came up with those answers.
Exactly.
So you might get the right answer, but you're always kind of left wondering, how much faith should I really put in this?
Yeah. And that's why there is a growing emphasis in the field on developing more interpretable models and techniques for explaining these complex algorithms,
Okay.
Because ultimately, we want to make sure that machine learning is accountable and transparent.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so let's shift gears for a minute and talk about one of the most exciting and rapidly evolving areas of machine learning, which is reinforcement learning.
Sure.
We talked about earlier how it's kind of inspired by how humans learn through trial and error. Can you maybe delve a little deeper into how it actually works and why it's generating so much buzz?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we discussed, reinforcement learning is all about an agent learning to interact with its environment and maximize its rewards over time.
Go.
So it's really well suited for tasks that involve kind of sequential decision making, where the outcome of one action influences the next.
Right. So instead of being given this sort of static data set, the agent is actively learning by exploring its environment, taking actions and observing the consequences.
Exactly.
It's a much more dynamic and interactive approach to learning.
Yeah. I mean, think about a self-driving car navigating a city.
Right.
It has to make a series of decisions constantly, when to accelerate, when to brake, when to change lanes, all based on this constantly changing environment. And so reinforcement learning gives you a way to train these systems to make optimal decisions in these really complex dynamic scenarios.
It sounds like it's pushing the boundaries of what machines can do,
Yeah.
enabling them to learn and adapt in ways that were unimaginable just a few years ago.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the AI coach by Anil Nathu mentions how it's being used in everything from, robotics to game playing to personalized medicine to resource optimization.
Wow.
It's really transformative.
And one of the coolest things about it is its ability to solve problems that are just way too complex to be explicitly programmed.
Right. Yeah. It's not like you can sit down and write a set of rules for every possible situation a self-driving car might encounter.
Right.
So reinforcement learning gives you a way to kind of circumvent that problem.
Yeah, that's what makes it so exciting, right? It's like we're moving beyond this paradigm of traditional programming and empowering machines to learn and solve problems in a way that's much more akin to how humans do it.
Exactly. Yeah. And it raises some interesting questions about, the future of work and the role of humans in an increasingly automated world.
Right. It's something that, we as a society need to really grapple with. But I think it's clear that, understanding the fundamentals of machine learning as laid out in resources like the AI Coach by Anil Nathu is really becoming essential for navigating this rapidly changing landscape.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it really is. And, speaking of rapidly changing landscapes, the AI Coach by Anil Nathu also, it kind of looks ahead to the future a bit and talks about some of the emerging trends and the potential of machine learning. And one that really caught my eye was generative AI. It
Yeah.
sounds almost like science fiction come to life.
It does, doesn't it? I mean, we've been talking about algorithms that can, analyze data, make predictions. Generative AI is about machines actually creating new content. I mean,
Okay.
think about, generating realistic images or composing music,
Hmm.
writing different kinds of creative text formats, even producing code.
So instead of just processing existing data, these models are actually creating new data.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's wild. So, I've heard of things like, ChatGPT and Dell-E. Are those examples of what we're talking about here?
Absolutely, yeah. Those are prime examples of generative AI in action. And, they've really kind of taken the world by storm with their ability to produce these incredibly realistic and sophisticated outputs. I mean, it's really starting to blur the lines between, human and machine creativity.
And the AI Coach by Anil Nathu kind of paints this picture of a future where this technology could revolutionize creative fields.
Yeah.
You could automate content creation, give artists and designers all these powerful new tools. You could even maybe accelerate scientific discovery by generating, novel hypotheses or simulating complex phenomena.
Absolutely. It's a future that's just brimming with possibilities.
Yeah. Now, alongside generative AI, there's another trend that I think is going to really reshape how we interact with technology, and that's edge computing.
Right.
Now, I've heard this term before, but I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure I understand what it means. Can you break it down for us?
Yeah, of course. So, up until now, we've mostly been talking about machine learning happening, in these powerful data centers or in the cloud.
Right.
Edge computing kind of flips that model on its head.
Okay.
It's about bringing those capabilities directly to the devices where the data is being generated.
Okay.
So think about your smartphone or sensors in your home or even, self-driving cars. They're all processing information locally.
So instead of sending all that data to a remote server to be analyzed, it's all happening right there on the device.
Exactly.
Okay. So what are the advantages of that?
Well, I mean, there are a few key ones. First of all, it reduces latency, so there's no lag time waiting for data to, travel back and forth.
Right.
And that's really crucial for applications that require real-time responses, like, those self-driving cars we were talking about.
The sense they got to make split-second decisions.
Exactly.
And the AI Coach by Anil Nathu talks about, how edge computing will enable like much smarter smartphones, more responsive IoT devices, and yeah, as you said, those self-driving cars.
Right.
It's about making technology, more immediate, more efficient.
Exactly. And there's another really important benefit, especially in today's world, which is privacy.
Okay.
With edge computing, you can process sensitive data locally without it ever having to leave the device.
Right.
So it gives users more control over their information.
That's a huge consideration, especially as, we all become more reliant on all these connected devices.
Absolutely.
It's good to know that these advancements can also help to enhance privacy.
Speaking of important considerations, the AI Coach by Anil Nathu also spends some time talking about the idea of responsible AI,
Yeah,
which I think is a crucial topic.
it is.
Because, with all this exciting potential we've been discussing, it's also important to make sure that we're developing and deploying this technology, you know, ethically and thoughtfully.
Absolutely.
It's not just about what we can do, but what we should do. So, what are some of the key principles of this responsible AI?
Well, it's really about making sure these systems are fair, transparent, and accountable. So that means addressing, potential biases in algorithms, safeguarding data privacy, and ensuring that AI benefits, all of humanity, not just a select few.
Right. And the AI Coach by Anil Nathu really emphasizes the need for, clear guidelines and regulations to kind of guide the ethical development of this technology. Yeah, it's a conversation that needs to be happening now as this field is evolving so rapidly.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's safe to say that this has been a really enlightening deep dive into machine learning. We've covered so much ground, from the basic concepts to the really cutting edge trends that are shaping the future. I feel like I have a much better understanding of this field now.
Yeah, it's been great exploring this with you.
The pleasure was all mine. And to all of our listeners out there, if you're interested in learning more about this fascinating world of I highly recommend checking out the AI Coach website. There's a ton of great information there, all expertly curated by Anil Nathu. So until next time, happy learning.
Thanks for joining us today. Visit the AI Coach website for more AI insights by Anil Nathu.